welcome. This is a recording to show you how to create a chart, a scatter plot graph, a trend line or best fit line, and then to calculate the slope using Excel. So what I've done so far on the left-hand side of the screen here, I have the lab open, our molar volume lab that we'll be doing in the Smart Science program. And I have the graph of the first metal that they ask you to do. There's a total of 5 metals that you'll be performing reactions with for this lab, and magnesium's the first one. So in the lab, they ask you to plot some points. The computer does it for you. They spit out this graph for you, and all of this information on the left-hand side with the X and Y axes is done for you as well. So when you get into the Smart Science program, all you have to do is do some clicking on a graduated cylinder, and it'll give you this graph and data automatically. So what it doesn't do in the Smart Science program is calculate your slope. And that's a lot of work by hand, and oftentimes it has a lot of error in it when you start doing these labs. So what I would like to do instead, so we can calculate our slopes, we don't have to do it manually, we can do it in the Excel program. It's also really good practice if you don't know how to create scatter plots or trend lines, best fit lines, or you don't use Excel very often. It's really good practice because when you move on to college and universities, they're going to ask you to do this type of thing. So what I've done so far is I've taken this first metal, magnesium, and the data that the Smart Science program has spit out for us, and I've created my first data table. So I've titled it Data Table 1, Magnesium Metal. Simple as that. You could title it whatever you like. I created 2 columns, one for the x-axis and one for the y-axis. My x-axis is mass in milligrams of the metal, and then the gas being produced in milliliters of the volume. I also put the x-axis and y-axis here, and I'm just looking at that. It may be better, actually. I'm going to change this around a little bit and move these on top. Because when I go to create the graph, if I copy those, that may come up in my graph for me, and then I don't have to go back in and label my axes. We'll see. I'm not quite positive. So far I have my data table. You can make this prettier if you want. You could put a box around it. You could put some color to it. It's completely up to you. So now that I have my data table, I don't need the Smart Science program anymore. So I'm going to scooch this down. And I'm going to make this bigger and just look at my Excel. So what I'd like to do is insert what's called a scatter plot. So I'm going to highlight my data like this, and I'm going to go up to Insert, and you can see there's all kinds of charts over here and bar graphs and pie charts. I want to click on this last one here. This is a scatter plot. When you click on that, you have several options. The first one is the one you want to choose. The others put lines in there for you that I don't want to do. And the bottom section with those bubbles, the dots become really big and it's hard to see. So you want to just click on this first one, but feel free to do what you like and see what they all do and have some fun with it on your own. But I'm going to go ahead and click the first one, and it looks like it didn't grab my axes for me anyway. So here's my scatter plot. What I would like to do here, and what's good practice for every graph, is to title it and to also show the label of each of your axes. So since they have a title for me there already, I could just click on it and fix it. So again, I'm going to call this magnesium metal. You can call it something else if you'd like. Oftentimes in the title, actually, what they usually do is mention, a lot of stuff came up there. What they do is mention the units that we're going to be measuring. So for instance, mass versus volume, something like that in the title as well. So it's up to you what you'd like to title your graph. Now, in addition to the title, you should label your axes. So what I'm going to do is click on my graph. I'm going to be in chart design. So if you're not there, click on it. And then all the way over on the left-hand screen, it says Add Chart Elements. So when I click on that, you could see a whole list of items that you're able to add to your chart. We're going to eventually go down there to Trendline, but the first thing I want to do is label my axes. So I'm going to go to Axes Titles. I'll start with my x-axis horizontally and change that one first. So I've labeled my x-axis that's the magnesium metal's mass that's going across the bottom. And actually, at this point, or maybe even before, double check that the computer created the graph with the right information on the right axes. So going, for instance, from 0 to 350, if I go over to my magnesium metal mass, it goes from 0 to 330. So that looks good across the bottom. It grabbed the right data. And my y-axis goes all the way up to 600, which makes sense because this is my y-axis data. So you never know with computers, or maybe you've highlighted it wrong or whatever happened. Always double check that the graph was set up properly. I'm going to do the same thing again and label my y-axis. So click on my graph, make sure I'm on chart design, go over to add chart element, axis title, and this time vertical. So my y-axis. Gas produced in milliliters. You can make the chart bigger. You could, now that you have the titles there, you can move them around. You can rename them. You can actually fool around with the numbers on the axes. If you want to have more numbers or less numbers and so forth, you can change almost anything with a graph. But this is the basic. So we want a graph with the title and the axes labeled, a scatter plot. And now the last thing I want to do is create a trend line or show the best fit line on my graph. So that line that goes through the most data points. You don't want to just connect the dots. Now we don't need the best fit line to calculate the slope. The Excel program is going to do that for us. But again, good practice with your graphs is to show that best fit line, because then it's really easy to see how good the data is and if there's a lot of error. So I'm going to click on my graph, go into add chart element, and this time go all the way down to trend line. And I want a linear line, so I'm going to go to that first one and click on it. And so it added that best fit line for me, and just at first glance now you could tell, yeah, that data is pretty good, right? It's going through or touching most of those points. Most of them are actually right in the middle. We got one or two slightly below, one or two slightly above. But you could clearly see there's not a lot of error there. So we've collected really good data. The last thing you want to do is calculate your slope. So you could pick any boxes that you'd like. I'm going to go down here at the bottom of my table, and I'm going to label this slope. And to calculate it, you put an equal sign, parentheses. I'm sorry, start that again. You want to type the word slope first, equal sign, parentheses. And now you want to make sure you're grabbing the correct data first. Let me back that up. I think I did it backwards again. Equals slope. There we go. Parentheses. So the equal sign, slope, parentheses. And now you want to make sure you're grabbing your y information first, because remember, slope calculation is y over x. So I'm going to highlight all of my y values first, and then hit a comma, and then all of my x values, and then end my parentheses. And then once you hit enter, the computer automatically calculates it for you. Let's do that one more time since I stumbled there at the beginning. So I'm going to go over to another block and calculate the slope one more time. So equals slope, the word slope, parentheses, your y data first, so highlight your y data, hit a comma, and then highlight your x data, end your parentheses, and there you go. So there's a couple things you want to do to just clean up this slope value. The first is you need the units in there somewhere. So you can either put the units after right here, or you could put it with the word slope that you have, which is what I'm going to do. So slope is y over x, so that's milliliters per milligrams is what my slope calculation's in. I'm going to right align this. I'm just going to make it pretty from here. So I'm going to right align this. I'm going to bold the whole thing. I'm going to put some borders around it, and you can even fill it in. Again, this is just cosmetic. You don't have to do any of that. And then finally, the last thing I would do is, obviously that slope has a lot of digits in it. And off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure how many significant digits this lab asks you for. You have to go back and to look at that original mass, or probably read in the directions at the top. You may be able to extrapolate how many significant digits you should have, but obviously that's way too many. So let's stop at about 5 for now, just so we can show how to clean this up a little bit. And what you want to do is click on your number, go up to the top, and you can see these arrows with the zeros after it up here. This first one on the left will make your number bigger. So I'm going to go to the one on the right, and I'm going to take away some of those numbers. So I'm going to keep going down until I get to 5. There we go. And that looks good. So I'm going to erase this second slope calculation from the bottom there, just to get it out of the way. And now magnesium's done. So again, there are 5 metals in this particular lab. You may be using this again for another lab in the future. But for this one, there's 5, so you should do this 5 times. And then once you're done, copy and paste it into the lab document. And the best way to do that is probably just screenshot it, or this symbol down here is my snipping tool. So your computer should have a snipping tool on it as well. You could search it on your computer if you don't know where to find it. And then just go ahead and snip the whole thing. So I'm going to show you and put it right into the lab document. So I'm going to snip this entire piece of magnesium metal, copy it. And let's see, do I have the lab document open? I do. Here it is. And this should go under your data collection, which is right here. And again, this is your lab document. I'm going to clean it up a little bit, but in essence, this is what it's going to look like. And I'm going to go over it with you beforehand in class. But right under data, I'm just going to paste that in. And there we go. And then you would hit enter and put the other 4 as well once you're done with those. So that is it for this video. Again, if I scooch this down and go back to Excel really quickly, what we've done in here is created a data table, used that data to create a scatter plot, making sure you have a title and axes labels, put in your best fit line or trend line, and then calculate slope. If you need any help with this or have any questions, please let me know.